Yeah.
Now that battery's been in use for an hour and a half. Maybe you want to change it.
Yeah.
Should I get you the first battery? One that's fully charged?
Oh, no,
Oh,
no,
no,
that
I'm
is,
sorry,
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
wrong
different,
cable,
yeah.
wrong cable.
Yeah, I know, when
I
they do,
forgot.
they get you.
I forgot.
So much for that.
Shelley comes to a lot of these, right?
Yeah. That's why she's not here, she's gonna be talking about some
Is this a
finances.
regular meeting?
No, 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 this is one of the workshops.
Oh,
Very good, good, good. Good morning. How are you? There you go.
How are you? Good.
You wanna get to it?
Okay.
This time.
this is a much bigger deal than the hospital board, I'll tell you.
Like the room.
Hospital board is like sleepwalking.
Normally there's there's like the plus and minuses. So people just only show up for the workshops or for the actual meetings.
Hi, John.
Good morning. Good morning, Ken.
Well, good morning. It's slightly past 9:30. This is the special meeting and board workshop, June 8, 2015. And we go by an agenda and let the record show that all of the representatives of the board are here. Mr. Sundberg is in the audience, not acting in the capacity of a board member today, but Mr. Allen is. And Lance, I can see him hiding down there in the corner too. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're going to move right along. Some of us have some time constraints today, so we want to do business, but we want to get through this thing expeditiously. We're not going to have public comments through the workshop. We typically have public comments during our normal board meetings, and but for the sake of time, we're just going to be moving through the business agenda. And we have an agenda, and in our meeting earlier, we discussed possibly having an executive session following item number 4 to discuss personnel issues. And is there a motion?
I would make a motion that we add an executive session to item number 4 to discuss performance of a public employee and contract updates.
Okay, there's a motion. I believe you meant to following number
Following.
4. Yeah. Okay. Board Member Johnson made the motion to add an executive session to this agenda, and that was seconded by Ms. Henderson. Any further discussion by anybody?
Bruce has one with item number 5.
Item number 5.
Excuse
We
me.
don't have that on the agenda.
I only have
They have a
4.
different agenda.
Okay.
They have different agendas, they're saying.
No, I can get it.
Well,
But they're not going off the workshop. They have their own little
sorry.
Special
So
non-public.
I'll add to,
Following number,
item number 5, all in that for item number 5. Following.
all right.
I'll second that.
Second, all right, it's a bit informal, but we're going
That's not
to
a
go
good one.
forward with the amended motion. At the executive session, we'll follow item number 5 to discuss personnel. Are there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve our agenda as amended. We have a motion from Mr. Hanold to approve the agenda as amended, seconded by Ms. Henderson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We have an agenda. So now we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And so we're going to go right on to workshop item number 1, Communication Systems Update, presented by Mr. O'Shaughnessy, Director of ICOM 9/11. Welcome, Tom. Good to see you again.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for the invitation again. I have with me today Judy Hill and John Jenkins, who are better known in the industry as our ETSU team, our Emergency Technical Services Unit. These are the two individuals who manage and maintain the IP digital backbone for everything we do in the county. When I say everything, I'm referring to law enforcement, fire, and medical. JJ is the individual who actually designed what we do and how we do it, not only for Island County, but for Skagit County. And we are contractually moving forward right now with San Juan County, bringing them into our system. So if you two will please, Judy and JJ have put a PowerPoint presentation together to not only to explain where Island Transit was a few years ago, where they are today, and where we'd like to see you go if you would like our help, and that is to get you to where basically everyone else in the county is with their radio communication. So Judy, if you would please.
Okay. What I wanted to do is just start out with the basics. I'm not assuming for any reason that everybody knows what radio systems are, and so what I wanted to do is start with a building block of a radio system. So some of this may be already known to you folks, and I apologize if it's redundant stuff. Basically, we start out with the basics of a radio system as a simplex radio station or system. A simplex radio system basically is one channel, one frequency for transmit and for receive. So as you see up here, you have a portable here all the way on the left-hand side, and it transmits directly to each unit in the field. So you have the portable all the way to the left-hand side. As you can see, he's trying to talk to other people out in the field. Effective communications at distances close enough for radio traffic might have problems due to objects in the path between the unit transmitting and the unit receiving the signal. In this example, you have this portable right here who is communicating with the guy who's transmitting because there's line of sight. Basically, there's nothing obstructing him. The next guy over here, these are trees here, and basically he may or may not transmit or talk to the guy that's the initial unit because of the trees. In the wintertime, the foliage is there's not trees are in full bloom, so obviously he's probably going to talk. In days like today, with all the trees and the bushes and things that are going on right now, he's going to have a hard time talking back to the guy. Now the one that's over here on top of the hill, obviously he has a line of sight because he's on top of a mountain or on top of a hill or on top of a tall building, and because there's nothing obstructing him from talking to the portable, he is going to communicate. And this poor guy over here on the other side, because he's behind a hill or a tall building, he is not going to be able to get the signal because there's something obstructing him. Radio signals do not go through mountains, they don't go through tall buildings, they don't go around obstacles. It is strictly line of sight in a simplex radio system. So the next thing, this is basically worse than what you have. So what you have right now, this is not what you have. I just wanted to start out with the concepts of what a radio system is. The next type of radio system we have is a repeater radio system. Now, a repeater radio system is a radio station that extends the range of communications. How it does that is, first off, you put a repeater, and it's usually installed on top of a tall building or at the very high peak of a mountain top. And you have this little guy over here to the left with his mouth wide open. He's trying to talk. And what he's doing is he is transmitting to a repeater on frequency B. So then the repeater receives the frequency B and then retransmits it on frequency A, which is a different frequency. And this frequency A and frequency B are known as a frequency pair. They're not the same frequency. The little guy in the happy face over here, he's basically starting to receive, and what he's receiving is on frequency A, and he receives the repeater on this frequency A. So basically the repeater system right here, this whole thing reprocesses a signal on one frequency. It receives it on one frequency, it reprocesses it, and then sends it out on another frequency. That is very extends communications, because if you have a repeater that's at a very high spot, somebody that's behind the mountain will be able to talk, as long as they can get to the repeater. So, and this is basically what you have for Island Transit today. This is the basic building block is a repeater radio system. So your current radio system right now is you have Lyman Hill, which is up here in the right-hand corner. Lyman Hill is on top of a 4,000-foot mountain. It's located in Skagit County. So anytime any of your people, your dispatchers or your field units, anytime they key up and talk or receive, that signal is going all the way to Lyman. And as you can see, it's between, depending on where they are in the island, it could be from 35 to 70 miles to the Lyman Hill repeater. At Lyman, the repeater then rebroadcasts the signal out to the units in the field, going all the way back, and depending on where you're at, it will have traveled between 70 and 140 miles by the time the person who's transmitted up to the mountaintop and the person who wants to receive hears it. It will have gone up to 140 miles round trip. Very transparent to you folks. You don't know that it's taken that, it says it in instants or in seconds. So it's not something that you count 1,000, 2, 1,000, although sometimes you can. But in a good radio system, it's in a blink of an eye, basically. So that's what you have right now. The problem with your system right now, the current system limitation, is that you have one site only, which is Lyman Hill. So anytime someone keys up and talks, whether it's dispatch, field unit, you're on portable or mobile, the buses, they're going, every time they key up, they're talking to Lyman Hill. The other thing is that there's not enough coverage. You have some dead spots. And most of the dead spots are going to be on the west and south sides of Camano and Whidbey Island, and they have limited coverage. The reason being is that they're on the far side of where the repeater is. So one thing about radio signals is they can't go over cliffs. And they can't go over, when they go over a hill, they're not going to get into the crevices of the hill, because this is the way radio signals work. So most of the time you have dead spots in this case, probably on the west side and the south sides of the island. You also have dead spots just because of where the buses are when they're trying to talk. They may just be in a dead spot, because that happens because you have one repeater trying to cover everything on the two islands, and it's virtually impossible. Next thing, another limitation is you have one frequency pair and you have 4 private lines. What that means is you have one frequency pair. You have a transmit frequency and you have a receive frequency. In your system, you have 4 different groups, from what I've been told, of communications. You have a fixed route, you have a paratransit group, you have a Camano Island group, and you have an emergency group. So there are 4 different groups, there's 4 different people, or 4 different entities that are talking amongst each other. The problem is that they're talking on one frequency. How they're being separated is what we call private line. A private line is a subaudible tone that rides along the frequency to allow the audio to open up for that specific group only. So say that Camino Island is on the air and they're talking. Only people that have that right private line, the subaudible tone, will open up the receivers to hear them. If they don't, then they won't know they're talking. The problem with this, though, is you have one frequency. So everybody is talking on the same frequency, and the biggest problem is that they don't hear each other because they're on different groups, and so what's happening is you can have more than one group talking on the same frequency and they're interfering with each other. They don't even know it because they're on a different private line. They're sharing the same frequency.
So if I could interrupt at any time if you have any questions.
Yes,
because-
please.
Because this is where it gets very, very important with the way you're doing business now. Because indeed, Judy has explained it very well, is that you have one frequency, but you have 4 basic channels on that one frequency. So if you have frequency A, who's busy talking, and all of a sudden frequency B comes up, they're going to be right on top of each other. They won't know it until they can't hear or understand each other because of the interference. If you get the 3rd one in there, it's going to get even worse. If you get the 4th one at the same time, forget it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's.
And so what I put
just
here
not
results in
good.
a garbled or missed transmissions or walked-on transmissions. The dispatchers would be the ones that hear it the most. They'll hear people trying to talk to them on 4 different groups, so to speak, but what they're just hearing is garbled transmissions. They may be missing ones because the person who's transmitting to them at the time might be in a stronger signal place than the other person who's trying to talk as well. And so what it ends up doing is, if all 4 groups key up and try to talk at the same time, you've got a mess. And dispatch, up to the dispatcher to figure out who's talking and what are they saying.
I think there was some questions.
Yes, and any questions?
Does anybody on one of those lines know that there's somebody else on the line?
Not necessarily. The only ones they will know is if they're on the same line. So if you have 2 people like within the same group, say Camino is trying to talk to somebody else on the Camino frequency or the dispatch, they'll hear the other person talk who's on the Camino Island and they'll hear dispatch. But they won't necessarily hear if somebody else keys up on, say, the fixed route channel.
And again, if they're talking at the same time, they may not hear anything at all except garbled transmission.
So for our number 4, emergency, you would go on to that line if you were having an emergency. But other people wouldn't necessarily know to go on that line with you, or are there always people who are on number 4? And does number 4, that private line, trump all the others?
No. It doesn't. There's no trumping of anything. And basically, it's first in, first out. So, and it's first in, and basically, next person comes in because he necessarily doesn't even know that the other person's on there.
The strongest field unit that gets to Lyman Hill trumps.
Well, I got a question, and this is probably more for operations side. How often are they keying these radios? What would be the reason for a driver to be talking to dispatch and dispatch talking to driver? These buses are on fixed routes. I mean, it's not like they're sitting there on a telephone call.
They transfer for emergencies, if someone's down, leaving the ferry late, or leaving their transfer point late, if they have a transfer, or if they need to get in touch with, Skagit Transit to hold for passengers.
Well, we no longer have that need.
Well, that particular one, yeah.
Okay, but so how many times a week on average do we have somebody that's down with an emergency?
Happens all the time. I mean, happens all the time. I mean,
Because I'm going to just give you from personal experience. I was a flight deck controller, and I could run a whole air wing on one radio frequency. So I just thought, I'm still trying to grasp the need for.
Can I say something real quick?
No, we're not
Public
taking any
comment.
public comment.
I'm just gonna talk
please.
about the communication.
Yeah, that's okay, thank you.
All right?
So my question about number 4, emergency. If somebody used that private line number 4, who's on it all the time?
Dispatch is one.
Dispatch is the
Yeah, so
only
they'll
one.
hear something coming up on that frequency. However, you know, however you use your radio system, I'm not familiar with in the sense of how the operations is, of how they use the 4 groups. But the dispatcher would be the one that would hear somebody call up on that 4th group, because they monitor all four sub-audible tones, all 4 groups basically.
But they could just do it off of 1, 2, or 3. But it's going to dispatch anyway, right?
Yeah. This is basically, for whatever reason, you know, and I'm not saying it's good or bad or I'm indifferent, but this is what prior regimes came up with to use in a radio system. You know, I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just basically trying to tell you, this is what you got right now. So,
Well, keep in mind, if I could, this is what was developed when Island Transit was developed. You know, and Island Transit was pretty basic, as I recall, when you guys first started. In fact, I don't even think he had Camino service back then. I think he was pretty basic. And I certainly don't know the numbers or the numbers of buses that are out there, but I think it's grown considerably over the years from when you started.
right. And it may not be an efficient, in fact, I'll go on the record and say it's not really an efficient radio system today because of the growth that you've had. And that's right, you know, I didn't even think about that. When you first started, it was probably, you know, a small amount of buses that what you have now, for sure.
The issue why they have the different deals that you can't do as a flight deck controller is if you have somebody on a coach that, where you have to notify them on the emergency channel, something where you have a problem or you have a person who, particularly you want a sheriff's deputy to take off the coach. You don't want to come up with your main channel where other people on the coach could hear that the person in the shirt that says ICOM on it is a suspect. You want to do it discreetly off to the side. So that's why the problem you have, why you need multiple.
Could you say that again?
Okay. For myself, I have experience with 3 other major transit systems, Metro and community transit, local ones, and some down the Southwest. When you're on a coach, if you have an emergency, you need to get over on an emergency channel. You don't want your audio to go out over on the other coaches to say that you have, in particular, someone that you need to be dealt with. You don't want them coming back and
Like a law enforcement issue.
law enforcement, or you don't want them to say, hey, we're looking for a certain type of suspect. I just use myself as an example, guy with a shirt that says ICOM on it. So there's an issue there that you need to talk to your operations people about. How do you deal when things get really tight? Personally, I've been on both community transit and Metro buses as a rider. There's someone on there that you just as soon open the door and throw them out because they're very dangerous.
Yeah, so in a way what this does, it in my opinion, it gives you a false sense of security because you think that people aren't hearing what's going on that frequency, and for the most part, they're not. However, all they have to do is turn their radio over to channel 4, and they're going to hear what's going on.
Who is they?
Meaning
The other
the other
Coach
operators.
Who cares if they hear?
No, that's not the point. The point is if it would be more efficient if everybody was listening and not walking on top of each other.
Because you can hear when someone's
Because
using
everyone
other
would hear, you know, or not everyone, most everyone would hear depending on where they are in the county. You're still gonna have problems because of basically you've got one repeater site and you have a ton of dead spaces in the county. That's the real problem. And as we get farther into the PowerPoint here, we'll show you what we've done for law enforcement, fire, and medical. So you can see the number of transmitters that we have, and you can see how the coverage improves.
Yes, sir.
I was just curious, would the dispatcher have the ability to tell the other calls to stay off the line, I have an emergency right now, and then keep the emergency on the line?
Yes, you could do that right now. However, you'd have to go to the 4 different groups and say, nobody talk. only I'm talking to this person. So yeah, there is a way that they can do right now, they can clear the air, basically, and have just that one person talking. That is
Okay.
possible right now. It wouldn't matter which channel you're on. But they would have to make sure that they go to every group and say, nobody talk, for whatever reason.
And we don't know how they manage their system, so I don't know if Camino's only listening to Camino or the different routes are only listening to the different routes. We have no idea. I don't know how.
Yeah, we don't know how the operations is, but what I'm saying is that could be that, You'd probably have to get with your dispatch operations people and say, how do you use the system? But this is what they're able to do.
And the point is, it's an extremely basic system.
Very basic.
Very, very basic, and it has limitations, a ton of limitations. And again, it can be a dangerous system. People are talking on top of each other on the different channels, and they need to be understood for whatever reason. So.
Yeah, the last point I want to make is that the coach to repeater is 25 watts. So basically, wherever the coach operator is, the bus operator is, or dispatch, they're basically talking on radios that are pumping 25 watts to linemen. May or may not get there depending on where they're at. Coming back out of linemen, because it gets reprocessed on a different frequency, it comes back out at 50 watts. So coming back out, it's a stronger signal. However, depending on where the coach operator is, may or may not receive it, because he may be in a dead spot, he may be down a hill. I don't know all your routes and all of this stuff, but the possibility is that they could be in an area that they're not hearing back from the transmitter, which is on Lyman Hill.
And the two islands are totally different, as some of you know. Whidbey Island, you're running up and down the spine of the island, as far as the main highway is concerned. Camino Island, you're not. You're going around the island, so it's two totally different islands.
I have a question for Sean or whoever else knows, the answer to this. Do you have, is there a communication culture of maybe not urgent or not necessary communication that crowds the system?
Yes, we have that as well.
And how do you manage that to reduce that crowding?
We try to give out reminders. We talk about picking up and listening before you speak to make sure someone else isn't talking, so you're not stepping on them when they're talking. Training.
Yeah, I work volunteer for the Forest Service as a backcountry ranger, and we have a radio system. And you always key it first to hear the static click and see if anybody is on it. But we have, especially during the fire season, we have a lot of communication through, we have about 11 repeaters in different areas.
Right.
But mostly in some of these areas, you get covered in the canyons and everything. But you have flight crews who are on it, the fire crews who are on it, and if your communication is not important or urgent, you key it and leave it alone.
Yep.
And do our drivers then, do they monitor that radio? Or is that silent?
I don't know, because I don't know how your users use the system. However, I do know that if they key up and talk, they may not be hearing somebody else on the other channel who's already talking. And so
Yeah.
they think the channel's clear, because in their ears they're not hearing anything, and so they key up. However, what they've just done is interfere with the other group, because the only thing prohibiting them from hearing them is that PL, that private line.
But do we have, in the buses, do we have a switch where you can monitor the radio traffic, or is it silent?
They don't, because they don't have, everything is PO protected. Because everything's PO. There is a, I don't think it, there may be, I'm not sure, but on most radio systems, they have what we call a monitor button. You can push this button in and you'll hear everybody.
Right.
Now, what I don't know is how your radios are programmed. It's a programming thing in the radios themselves. We have this button where you can push the,
We don't have that. You have to go to the individual channel to hear who's talking on that particular channel. So that's why she was saying, even on the emergency channel, if you go to channel 4, doesn't stop someone else from going to Channel 4 and listening to whatever that emergency is.
But again, who cares?
Yeah, well, we don't
And
recommend.
the thing is my point is that this is supposed to be for business use only. It shouldn't be cluttered up with a lot of chatter from people just talking.
Yeah.
Bus 113, leaving Oak Harbor Station. Okay, you're done.
Well, and one of the major problems that you folks have, the major problem, is that you're transmitting through a site that's 35 miles away, over in Skagit County. That's a big problem. Why, and I can only speculate why it was put up there, because it's a very high mountain, it's 4,000 feet, so it does get in here. However, because of the growth that you folks have had over the last 10, 15 years that I've lived here, almost 20 now, it's at full capacity in the sense of that one transmitter pumping out 50 watts, which is only 50 watts because the FCC says we can only put out 50 watts. If we could put out 1,000 watts, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
And if I could, it's no different, really, it's no different than what we had for law enforcement, just 5 years ago.
Yes.
Because law enforcement just 5 years ago, law enforcement was sitting at Lyman. They were sitting over at Orcas Island. They were sitting Orcas Island in San Juan. They were sitting in Jefferson County. And then they were sitting over in Snohomish County. And each time you had to flip the switch to talk to that transmitter depending on what area of the county you were working. So somebody working Camano normally would have to switch to that Snohomish transmitter. And it depends if you're working north or south. You had to switch to those transmitters.
Right, and the dispatcher also had to know where they were. So the dispatcher would have to know, okay, well, that unit's calling me from the south side of the island, so that means I gotta be on Maynard Hill transmitter. Oh, that guy's calling me from north of Deception Pass Bridge, for instance. I have to put him on Mount Erie. So there's a lot of thinking that the dispatchers had to do also as well.
Or the field units.
So anyway, so moving ahead, what I want to do is kind of go over a little bit of what happened in 2011, because in 2011 you folks had an upgrade, and out of that upgrade came a lot of discontent and the fact that it didn't work. And so I want to just touch on what happened there. Okay, the concept was that the radio system upgrade was to continue to allow the coaches to talk to the dispatcher via lineman. That wasn't going to change. You're still always going to talk to linemen. But the difference is that 4 receivers were going to be spread around at 4 specific sites and connected to dispatch through a voice over IP radio configuration scheme, and that was set up by the IT department here at Transit. So basically, we're going to have 4 receivers at different places, and then through internet, voice over IP, which is basically through the internet, or through a network of some flavor, get back to Transit